This woman has been living underwater for 20 years, and the reason why is sad. Welcome back, Charlie here. These people live some of the most difficult and bizarre lives. From a girl who lives inside a basketball, to a man who lived folded in half for 28 years. First, we have to look at this woman who's been living in water for 20 years. If you've ever stayed in water for a few hours, you'll know your skin gets very pruned. Well, just imagine what this woman's skin is like after spending 20 years in water. This is Padaruni Ghosh from West Bengal, India. She wakes up every day before sunrise and runs to dive into a nearby lake. She then stays in the lake all day, only coming out to sleep at night. But why does she do this? Well, Padaruni has a very mysterious and rare disease. This makes her skin feel excruciatingly painful when she's not in water. Even the air on her skin makes her feel very inflamed. She was diagnosed with this disease all the way back in 1998. She's now 65 years old, meaning she's spent over 20 years underwater. She stays in the lake for 12 to 14 hours every day. Staying in this lake is the only thing that relieves her pain. Sadly, she's too poor to go to a doctor or get any treatment. And it's not even known if treatment exists for her disease. After all, it's incredibly rare and not very well understood. It's incredibly sad that only water can take away her pain. It means she has to live a very bizarre and difficult life, cut off from her friends and family, and only talking to villagers who pass by to fish or swim. Next, we have to look at this girl who lives inside a basketball. This kid is half girl, half basketball. This is Chen Hyong-yang. This girl is from China. When she was only 4 years old, she got into a bad car accident. She went unconscious, and when she woke up, her legs felt cold and numb. She was soon told by doctors that she'd have to have her legs amputated, meaning that she could never walk, run, or play ever again. All this at only 4 years old. But amazingly, Qian adapted to her new life. She was from a very poor family, meaning that they couldn't afford prosthetic legs. So instead, Qian's grandfather came up with an idea. He cut a basketball in half for her to get around, and made 2 wooden planks with handles to support her arms. Because of this, Qian was now able to do all the things she'd missed out on. She was able to play with friends, go to school to get an education, and even help out around the house. This girl lost both her legs, but never gave up. But many still felt sad that she would live like this for the rest of her life. But here's the best part of Qian's unbelievable story. After 5 years of living inside a basketball, her story finally got picked up by the media. People felt incredible amounts of sympathy for Qian, and began to send her family donations, meaning that she could finally afford prosthetic legs. Here is Qian walking with her new legs. She could already do so much with only a basketball for legs, but now she can do even more. She joined a swimming team. She found it hard at first, but after training 4 hours a day, she became really good, and eventually won silver and gold medals for the team. She also began exercising to get even stronger. I think it's safe to say the strongest thing about her is her spirit. Many people in her position would have simply given up on life, but she refused to do so. She adapted and worked with what she had. And today she truly lives her life to the fullest. Next, we have to look at the real-life Tarzan. This man spent 41 years living inside a jungle, and he didn't even know that women existed. For 41 years, he only interacted with his father and brother. But how is this even possible? This is Ho Van Lang from Vietnam. When this man was only 2 years old, his mother and 2 other siblings were killed by a US bomb. This was during the very dangerous Vietnam War. So his father brought him and his brother into the jungle to hide. They made their own shelter and clothing, and hunted for food, and drank water from rivers and streams. They would mainly eat very bizarre foods. For example, lizards, monkeys, snakes, and bats. A few years after they moved to the jungle, the war ended. But Ho Van Lang and his father had no idea. That's why they lived in the jungle for 41 years. But one day, a man found Ho Van Lang in the jungle. The man was blown away. He had never seen a real-life Tarzan before. He immediately took Ho Van Lang back into civilization, and people began to teach him how to come back to civilization. He was like a child in a man's body, and he didn't even know what a woman was. The last woman he'd ever seen was his mother, and because he was only 2 years old at the time, he had no memory of her. Amazingly, he integrated rather well. First, he learned how to speak, and he was also shown a television for the first time. In 2021, Ho Van Lang passed away from cancer at 52, but this man lived an amazing and unique life. Now we have to look at this man who lived folded in half for 28 years. This is Li Hua from China. He had to live seeing the world upside down for 28 years. This caused him lots of physical and psychological pain. His condition was very rare, so most doctors said they couldn't help. They were worried that any surgery could end his life. But Li's mother never gave up. She traveled the country trying to find a doctor, and after many years, finally met Dr. Tao Hu Ren. He was brave enough to take on Li Hua. It took 2 weeks for him to come up with a plan. He decided he would need to break Li's bones, and then reconstruct them in the right way. It sounded crazy, and many people doubted the doctor. But after 4 very long operations, it worked. Li was finally able to see the world upright. And amazingly, after some time, he learned how to walk once again. It's all thanks to this very brave doctor. And of course, Li's mother, who never gave up on him. Moving on, let's look at the dirtiest man to ever live. Most people feel dirty after not bathing for a few days. But Amu Haji from Iran has not bathed in over 65 years. When Amu was a young man, he experienced a traumatic event due to water. This made him very afraid of water or bathing, so he decided to never go near water in his life. The villagers of Deshgar, Iran found him living in a hole. He would do nothing all day but sleep and smoke cigarettes. But the villagers felt very bad, so they built him a small concrete hut to live in. Amu was very sad living alone. He always wanted a partner, but sadly, he never got one. He always believed bathing would make him sick, but in 2022, he finally agreed to bathe. But shortly after, he became severely ill and passed away at the age of 94. Maybe not bathing for so long made his body not used to water, and finally bathing caused him to pass away. Next, we have to look at this monk who hasn't eaten for 70 years. This is Prahlad Yani from India. He claims to have not eaten for 70 years. He says when he was 7 years old, he had a vision, and since then he hasn't eaten any food or drank any water. Now I know what you're thinking, he's probably just making this up, but here's where things get crazy. In 2003, Prahlad agreed to be monitored by doctors and scientists for 10 days. He was monitored around the clock for 10 days straight, filmed by surveillance cameras the entire time. And during this entire time, he didn't eat or drink even once. He also never used the bathroom. The doctors and scientists were amazed and baffled. Humans can only survive 8 days without food, and 3 days without water. So how did this man survive for 70 years? In 2020, Prahlad passed away at the age of 90, and to this day no one knows how he survived all those years without eating or drinking. Moving on, let's look at this girl who can cry diamonds. This is Hasna Muslamani from Lebanon. One day this 12-year-old girl was in school when she felt something in her eye. The girl's eyes were aching, so her mother took her to the doctor. The doctor was able to remove 3 glass-like transparent objects from her eye. It appeared Hasna had been crying diamonds. The doctor had no explanation for this. Since then, Hasna has been crying 7 to 8 crystals every day. Luckily, she doesn't feel pain when this happens. The crystals are very sharp and solid, like diamonds. Doctors still haven't explained what's going on with Hasna's eyes, but some believe she may suffer from cystinosis. This is an amino acid metabolism disorder, which could cause her tears to crystallize inside her eyes. Moving on, we have to look at this man who hasn't lowered his arm in 45 years. Try raising your arm up in the air. It will probably start to ache after a few minutes. Now imagine doing that for 45 years. That's what Amar Bharati from India has done. In 1973, he quit his job and left his friends and family. He decided to dedicate his life to his religious beliefs, and as a sign of this devotion, he raised his arm in the air. At first, this was very painful, but after a long time, he got used to it. Now his arm is so weak, it can't be moved. changed. That's because he's so used to it being in this one position. Amar became famous for this and now has his own followers. And amazingly, his own followers are now doing the same thing. They've raised their own arms for years and sometimes decades. It sounds crazy, but the dedication sure is impressive. Now let's look at this man who lives in an iron lung. This is Paul Alexander from Texas, USA. He has spent his entire life in this canister. When he was a kid, he had the disease named polio, causing him to be totally paralyzed. This canister is the only thing keeping him alive. It's what allows him to breathe, and if he left it for just a second, he would pass away. Paul has to live inside this prison for life, all so that he can survive. Thankfully, iron lungs are no longer used. Paul is one of the only people left on the planet to still live in one of these all day, every day. But now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Comment below which of these people lives the most unusual life. If you want to see my short videos, then check out my Shorts channel. I've been Charlie, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.